Welcome to Doing, Being, Thinking, Dialectical Behavior Therapy skills for making a life worth living. I'm your host, Eric Nykamp, a therapist and clinical director at the Grand Rapids campus of Adolescent and Family Behavioral Health Services, a mental health practice with campuses throughout the great state of Michigan. Hey everybody, welcome back to Doing, Being, Thinking, a DBT podcast where we talk about skills for making a life worth living. Hey, my name's Eric. I'm one of the clinical directors at Adolescent and Family Behavioral Health Services, where I'm also employed as a DBT therapist. And I'm here with one of my favorite coworker friends, Selena. Selena, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I am Selena Gross. I am a clinical director of our Saginaw office at Adolescent and Family Behavioral Health Services. Also a 9-year DBT clinician.
So around the office, we really enjoy nerding out on DBT. And so
we are total
going to
geeks.
Absolutely. So we're going to talk today about the STOP skill. And for those of you that are following along in your book or that kind of know something about it, the STOP skill is one of the distress tolerance skills. These are skills that we use when we're at kind of like a really high level of emotional intensity. And I don't know, Selena, have you had to use the STOP skill recently yourself?
I actually use the STOP skill all the time, which
Me
I
too.
notice. Well, distress tolerance is usually designed for when we're like at that higher level. However, I tend to use the STOP skill so I don't get to that higher level. So yes, I use it quite a bit.
Yeah. I had one today as well. I said something to somebody that I realized it was hurtful. And instead of going forward and just kind of doubling down, I had to stop. And well, we'll talk about the other skills, but it did keep me from making it worse. So let's talk a little bit about what the STOP skill is. The STOP skill is an acronym. So the
like
letters,
everything in DBT.
yeah, STOP are the 4 steps in the STOP skill. And for me personally, there's a lot of acronyms in DBT. The STOP skill, I think, is probably the best acronym because the word means what you do. There are some other ones I'm not so married to.
Stretch.
Yeah, they are definitely a stretch, like using the second letter of the word and all this. So, Selena, what are some situations where you might want to use the STOP skill? And I'm thinking especially like for people that are listening who might be in DBT, what are some of the things that maybe you hear in your office or things that you do yourself when you'd want to use it?
So for me, I know I use it a lot with text messages or emails.
Oh, do share.
Do share. I tend to read into those and interpret things in a way that isn't always the best.
Mm-hmm.
So I instantly can get riled up, and then I find myself responding and just sending this, not sending, but typing out this response. It's probably not the best response. So then I have to, like, if I see myself typing faster than I normally would, I'd be like, okay, we need to use the STOP skill and check this out because something's going on. So then I can go back and reread the email or the text. And then I'm like, oh yeah, I missed this big part right there.
Mm-hmm.
So STOP skill has saved me many, many times from bad responses of emails or texts.
Yeah, I find it really helpful. A lot of times people describe 2 kinds of things where they're having trouble with impulses. One of them is in relationships, like what you brought up, like, I want to say this thing, or I want to, tell somebody what I'm thinking, but the intensity might be overwhelming. So, and if you made that mistake a few times, you might know, like, wow, I'm about to make the same mistake again. Or I'm also a long texter, so that's one of my things that I clue into. Like, if I'm sending a paragraph and not a couple sentences, I might be in emotion mind. The other one is like impulses that might be like target behaviors that could be self-injury, or maybe doing something like sexually dangerous or using substances, if that's one of the things that you're working on, to get in control of impulses that if you acted on them, it would probably make it worse. Or that maybe afterwards you'd feel some regret over.
I've had I say several clients that work on it for anger.
Yes.
So that they don't just do that impulsive act out in anger, because that generally will make it worse. So we can use that stop skill, especially that the T of taking a step back. I encourage people, like, if you feel yourself getting heated in an argument, do that stop skill and take a step back. Just give yourself a few minutes. I have one right now who's actually doing it at work. So she just went back to work and is very anxious. So when she gets super anxious, she'll take a step away and then go into the bathroom. So just gives herself a few moments to kind of bring herself down and use some other skills.
And I think the stop skill too is, it's very, very practical, but it can also be really helpful to use it as a validation tool, that when you stop, and we'll go through the acronym here in a minute, that you get to look at what are you feeling, what are you thinking about doing, and there's another skill called check the facts. And does what you want to do, does it fit the facts? Does what you're feeling fit the facts, and what you want to do with that? And sometimes, like, you can just have compassion for yourself, that like, wow, I'm in a really, really difficult situation. And to just appreciate it.
And validate the emotion that you're having.
Yeah.
Because sometimes we definitely invalidate that, or maybe the person we're having that conversation with is invalidating us in that moment. So it is time. It does give you a chance to take a step back and validate that what you're feeling is valid. Whatever your emotion is in that moment is valid.
So let's go through the stop skill, what the acronym means, and then let's talk about how we'd use it in real life.
Okay. So the first one is the easy one, is just stopping. It's whatever you're doing in that moment is just literally stopping. So picturing that big red stop sign. The T is what I alluded to earlier, of taking a step back. I often encourage people, like, if you're in a public place or like at work, bathroom is like a perfect place to just go and take a step back and be away for a while. If you're at home, if you have like a place that you could, like your bedroom, or an office, anywhere like that. Or maybe you need to go outside. Just taking a step back from whatever that situation is, to give yourself just a moment to come down from whatever situation you were in that moment. The O is for observe. So this is where that checking the facts comes in. Like, we just want to observe everything that's happening around us. Kind of like for me, for my like text messages or my emails, this is where I'd be like, okay, what is happening? Why am I having such a reaction? So I'm observing what my body's doing, like both inside and out. I'm observing that I was typing super fast. I have like a book response when I normally send like 2 sentences. So I'm just observing everything that's going on around me and inside. And then seeing if what my reaction is, if that does fit the facts of the situation. And then the P is for proceed mindfully. So then after I check the facts and I've seen everything that's around me, and I've kind of come down a little bit from when I took my step back, then I can proceed mindfully with whatever decision I make. So keep with the emails. Usually it means that I delete everything that I hastily responded, and I make a better email that's not going to be so destructive for me in the end.
That's funny that you talked about the emails. I've had for a while a deal that I've had with my wife, where if I'm going to send an email that I think is going to be potentially taken the wrong way, I have her read it over. So my P of proceeding mindfully also involves having somebody look at what I'm about to say and tell me if it's a good idea. Because sometimes, if I'm really in my own emotion mind, I just really think that people need to hear the truth. And whenever I think that, oh my Lord, like it's just like, that is the worst. I know it's impulsive, right?
I like
And the
that.
only reason I know is because I've done it a few times and I've really reaped the consequences of
Yes.
that, where you're like, oh well, now there's hurt feelings, the relationships, a little rocky. I feel embarrassed, kind of
And that
want to
might not have
hide.
been your intention.
Oh, right.
However, it's how it's perceived on the other end.
I mean, that was the situation that I had today where I realized, like, oh, I'm sticking my foot in my mouth again. And it was with somebody that I really cared about. And so I observed that everybody else in the room was looking very surprised at what I said. And then I observed that I was feeling really embarrassed.
Been there.
Yeah. So when I took a step back, I was like, I think I need to apologize. Yeah.
And this can be used in so many different situations, like from emails to text messages to conversations with other people to work, to even when we're by ourselves feeling anxious about something. This stop skill can be used in any of those situations.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes the proceeding mindfully, they take all these different forms. Like we're talking about like, apologizing or not doing something, but sometimes it's more of like a harm reduction in that like, well, I'm not going as far as I normally would. And that can also be proceeding mindfully if you're doing it with intention, you know.
Yes.
So being kind to yourself as you're proceeding mindfully.
And just like all the DBT skills, the more you practice, the more it comes naturally. My one of my people that is using it for anger, she's like, "Hey, I didn't hit him this time. I just
Mhm.
yelled." Okay. All right, that's an improvement.
It's harm reduction.
So I was like, "Good for you." Like, yes, that's an improvement. Now we can work on the no yelling
Yeah.
because we got that one down.
Yeah. I had someone today, they were talking about how they had done the stop skill and they felt like it was mostly effective, but they still left feeling embarrassed. And so they said, okay, so if they were going to go back through and if they got to live the day again, what they would want to do the next time they do this stop skill, if it happened in the same situation, was they said, like, well, I think this time I would go outside instead of staying in the building where I was. They're taking a step back. One way of doing a step back is to kind of reflect internally, but another way is to literally remove yourself from the situation.
Yes.
And they were so happy when they came up with that because they realized like, oh, there's other ways to do it.
Oh, yes. Whatever another DBT skill we'll get to at one point is doing what works. So you do
Yep.
what works for you in the situation. I know for me, in my personality, like I can get heated real quick and I can also come down real quick. So for me, it's just give me 5 minutes, let me walk away for 5 minutes, and I can come back and I'll be good. Now, other people may have to leave the situation completely, and that's okay. You got to do what works for you.
Yep. I'm the kind of person where if my emotions get high, they stay high for a while. So I remember when I was a new parent, dealing with my kids when they would scream in public was terribly embarrassing for me. And so my take a step back was that pretty much wherever I went, I had a car. And so I just go sit in my car sometimes. Or if my kid was screaming, I might take them, put them in their car seat, shut the door to the car, and stand outside the car so I could watch them, but I could not hear the screaming so loud. And there's all sorts of creative ways of taking a step back observing what's going on and proceeding mindfully.
Yes. One thing that can sometimes get in the way, I don't know if getting in the way. If you're feeling like it's not really working, one is checking to see like if you're taking a step back is
Mm.
somewhere where you can do that observation mindfully. Another is I've had many clients tell me once I use a stop skill and it didn't work, and we bring out the book and we look through the steps, they're like, oh, yeah, I forgot that part.
Yeah,
So if it doesn't work, it's just kind of going back and checking um, to make sure you got all the steps because, we're in the moment. Sometimes we forget things, and which is totally fine. So it's just making sure we do all the steps. Also, it is not abnormal to do all the steps. You have what you want to do to proceed mindfully. You come back, that other person, especially if it is with another person, is
mhm,
still agitated. So they agitate you again. So it
yep.
is okay to do another stop. If it's like, wait, I'm getting up to a 7, an 8, 9 again. Okay, do another stop skill. That's totally fine.
Mhm. Even letting somebody know, like, I'm starting to feel so intense that I'm not sure that I'm going to be able to have this conversation right now. And I'd really like to have it when I'm not feeling so intense.
And making sure you stick to your boundary because I know a lot
Absolutely.
of people will be like, oh, well, that just means you're trying to shrug it off. And you're like, you can just stick to your boundary and say, no, that's not what this means. I'm
Yeah.
just using my stop skill because I care about this conversation and we're agitated right now. So we're not going to be able to have a healthy conversation.
I think that's a common area that a lot of people will struggle with is that idea of reading yourself to know if you're still escalated. And sometimes we can like tell ourselves like, well, I need to resolve this now. And kind of like paying attention to that urgency to act now and to actually be really curious about it. Like, well, why do I think I need to act right now? Sometimes we notice that we've come down just a little bit, but might not appreciate that we could come down a lot more and be effective than diving right back in as soon as, you're just a tiny bit re-regulated.
I've had one person talk about this exact thing. She's like, I went to the bathroom. I observed. I thought I was calm. So I proceeded. I opened the door and they were sitting there. I took one look and go, nope. Went back in the bathroom and did some more calming techniques. I was like, that was perfect.
There was a time where I did anger management classes and I ran this anger management group. And one of the things that we talked about in there was how long does anger, the emotion of anger, stay in the body? And in that curriculum, they're like, well, when somebody loses when they call it blowing your stack, when you blow your stack, so if you act on your anger, it takes a person 48 hours to come back to baseline. And in
Really?
that window, you're much more likely to overreact to another stimulus and very likely to blow your stack again. And so we would talk about that with the people because we'd say like, oh, how long do you think it takes before you stop feeling angry if you take a break? We didn't call it the stop skill. And they'd be like, oh, 5 minutes, 15 minutes. And so then when you talked about the 48-hour window, that you're more likely to be escalated in that 48-hour window, they were like, oh, that's why I've ended up in some of the situations I've ended up in. And I don't know how hard and fast that 48 hours is, but that might give you an idea of like, how long do I need to observe my de escalation before I re engage with the same thing that made me that mad?
48 hours.
Isn't that amazing?
That's like, oh,
I've seen people track this on their diary card where they realize like, okay, I had one day where I lost control of my temper. I said the thing that I didn't want to say, but I did it. And then you're living with the person. And like, oh, I keep seeing them around the house and I keep wanting to have like another conversation about it, or, or
That
the
makes
next thing that they
sense.
do that's annoying. It just like makes me so annoyed. And like, why do I have 5 days in a row? Like, well, it's that 48-hour window.
Now I'm
What
going to have to start paying attention.
it's just an interesting thing. And I see it in
is.
myself. I see it in myself because I've got a normal brain like other people.
Sometimes I wonder about mine.
Yeah. Well, let's wrap up with this. Like, how does the STOP skill help us make a life worth living?
Oh, that one. So that one, because that's our DBT goal, is making our a life worth living. Kind of like for me, it's what we alluded to earlier, that the stop skill can actually make us stop and look at what's happening around us before we get too high. Because when we're in those higher levels, those 7, 8s, 9s, and 10s, we're more likely to act impulsive out of those numbers, those high intensities. So that stop skill we can use to help keep us more regulated, so we don't have acting those impulsive and doing something that's going to go against our life worth living goals.
I think one of the things that we alluded to earlier, but having better relationships with people. If people avoid us because we're really not very good at regulating our emotions, they might just not know how to be around us because they don't want to get caught in the crossfire. And if we start using the stop skill more effectively, like a lot of times people will say like, oh, I noticed that you're different now. Or I remember when you used to do this thing or that thing, I was like, we have a lot of regret and embarrassment over it. And they're like, you haven't done that in a really long time.
I've had clients come tell me that their significant others have said those exact same things to them.
Mm-hmm. It's hard to be in a relationship, if we're talking about, sometimes the really serious downside, like it's hard to be in a relationship with somebody that wants to die. Or if you have to keep going to psychiatric hospitals. And so learning how to do the stop skill for some of these really life-endangering behaviors, that can really help people feel like they can get close to you because they're not afraid that you're going to die and they're going to get close to someone who's going to die, or that, keep being psychiatrically hospitalized. What if something's really wrong here? And when people aren't telling that story to themselves, they might feel like I can be closer to this person because they're able to monitor themselves a lot better. So that's the stop skill. And, we hope that was a really helpful review, or if you're hearing about it for the first time, that maybe it'll get you curious about how to use skills. If you are not in DBT therapy, and this is the kind of thing that makes you think and say like, oh my goodness, I would love to learn skills for making a life worth living. You can definitely contact us at AFBHS. If you're somewhere outside of the state of Michigan, look up DBT therapists and see if you can find somebody that can do this, because learning these kind of skills really does go a long way towards making a life worth living.
Yes.
So until next time, thanks for listening.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. Doing, Being, Thinking is an educational podcast about dialectical behavior therapy and is not intended as a substitute for therapy. This is a podcast outreach of adolescent and family behavioral health services, offering both in-person and telehealth therapy to children, teens, and adults throughout Michigan. If you are a Michigan resident and want to get started with therapy, including DBT, children's DBT, or other evidence-based therapies, please contact us at 616-719-0194 or find us on the web at www.adolescentfamilybhs.com.